What's up? Recently, I had the urge to replay Resident Evil, and without really thinking about it, I reinstalled Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I hopped into the game, started a new campaign, had a blast. It was a great time. Now, if you were to ask anyone what is the definitive way to start the series or getting into the franchise, everybody would have a different answer for you. See, Resident Evil has a variety of entries and titles that you can pick from. All of them have their own merit, whether it's Resident Evil 4 for its mix of action and horror and a perfectly blended campaign, or if it's the classic RE2 where the franchise really finds its footing, or if you really feel up for it and you want to kill the president, you can play Resident Evil 6.
I just shot the president.
He had already been infected by the time we found him.
There's something to be said about all these games. Personally, for me, it all started as a kid when I would watch my brother and my cousins play the older PS1 Resident Evils and race each other to see who could do it the fastest. I was so intrigued by how they could seamlessly ignore all the horrifying monsters on screen, maneuver their way through. They solved every puzzle in seconds. They pulled off dodge maneuvers I could only hope to replicate. It was exhilarating. There was only one problem. I was bitch made. I couldn't play the games myself. I was too scared. The horror genre never clicked for me. To this day, I'm still the guy who's closing his eyes and looking away from the screen if I'm watching something scary. So a game like Resident Evil wasn't something I could play without getting too scared or ultimately rage quit because I couldn't really find my way through the labyrinth that is the game. That was until I got a laptop when I was a teenager. Giving a teenage boy a laptop with access to the internet can open up so many avenues, so many wonderful things you could do. I, in my infinite wisdom, opted to do what many kids my age did. Emulation! See, I found a way to beat the system. With emulation, you didn't have to follow the strict rules of Resident Evil when it came to saving, at least. In the older games, you could only save using an ink ribbon, which was a crutch for me because I was a coward. But with the ability to make multiple save states in every area of the game, I was able to eliminate the scary aspect of the game. Well, that's not true. I was still scared, but I was brave. I was able to enjoy the original 3 Resident Evil games. I came to appreciate the series, kind of launched me into playing most of the games and finishing almost all of it. Except for Code Veronica. I don't know anyone that's finished Code Veronica.
I can't! No!
But that was ages ago, so I wanted to go into the series with a new, fresh perspective. I'm 30 right now. Do not call me Unk, okay? Don't you fucking dare. And the only way to do that and see what made the series click for me was to go back to the original Resident Evil. When I thought back to these older games, for some reason, this one made me feel really uneasy. I don't know if it was my younger self being really scared of low-poly graphics, or maybe the atmosphere was just that scary. Either way, I completely believe that when I went back this time around, it would still hold up as the scariest. I was wrong. The game is probably the easiest and goofiest one out of the original trilogy.
You guys are idiots.
I love this version of Wesker, by the way.
Not because it failed at being a horror game, but because the whole thing is kind of undermined by silly voice acting, a silly premise, and an experimental gameplay system that would be later fixed down the line. Some of these elements still exist in Resident Evil, but they're done in a better way. And maybe that is why I am talking about Resident Evil 1, is because this game sort of builds upon the entire franchise. Everything you can imagine that is done later down the line has roots in Resident Evil 1, and I would like to discuss those roots with you guys. The game sets the tone very early on in the opening sequence, letting you know what these characters are supposed to bring to the table. It's an over-the-top 80s action thriller, and it's endearing. I believe this is what makes the game click for a lot of people. When people think about Resident Evil, they think about its dumbest moment. Yes, a game like Resident Evil 7 can elevate the genre into places it never went before and make the game really scary. But what people will always talk about are the silliest moments, like Leon making quips in Resident Evil 4, or like Chris punching a boulder in Resident Evil 5. The contrast of the characters with the setting is what separates Resident Evil from other horror games, in my opinion, and Resident Evil 1 is the catalyst for all of that. You play as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, who are part of a special ops unit called Umbrella that are sent to the Baker's mansion outside of Raccoon City to investigate something. And much like their real-life counterparts, these cops are swiftly defeated by a pack of dogs. Yes, that's how the game starts. You are defeated by a pack of dogs. Now, in my replay of Resident Evil 1, I opted to play as Jill because I like the character, and also she's a woman that existed before incel gamers knew women existed in video games, so she's okay to play. She's not woke. Don't worry, guys. I made sure.
Fucking pronouns!
I play as Jill, and you're paired up with a psychopath named Barry.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Barry is a good guy. The story makes you believe he's evil and betraying you when in fact he's just a good guy being controlled by Wesker and being blackmailed. Now with that said, I f***ing hate Barry. See, Resident Evil has this trope. In every game, there's an annoying companion you have to deal with. Really annoying, like to the point where you ask yourself, why the fuck are you here annoying? Barry is the inception of the annoying companion character trope. You can thank him for characters like Ashley from Resident Evil 4, Sherry from Resident Evil 2, or like Steve from Code Veronica. Editing button mash here, I realized that in my video I never really clarify why Barry is annoying. So let me explain why I thought Barry was annoying. In my playthrough, a lot of elements came together to paint Barry in the worst light possible. He seems to have a habit of putting you in dangerous situations and then solving it after you felt the pain of it. Like for example, when he lets you go into a hole in the ground and then drops a rope that is your only escape, making you unable to go back up for a while. Or the classic video game BS moment where you happen to fight a boss fight, defeat it, only to have a cutscene play where you lose and have another character save you. In this case, it's Barry. Also, the plot demands him to appear as shady as possible to build the tension of him probably being the traitor. All this is to subvert the obvious reveal that Wesker is the one behind all of it and to absolve Barry of all of his wrongdoings. I know, despite him being coerced, if you look back at the context of it all, Barry did not need an epiphany in that moment to save Jill from Wesker. He already saw a few of his friends die along the way, making his character appear very annoying. Also, my playthrough, Barry never did save me from Wesker. He just listens to him until the end and ends up dying off screen. Very anticlimactic and got on my nerves. Anyways, back to the video. Not to say these characters are bad on a story level. I don't think any of them are bad on a story level. They actually work out pretty well and they move the story in a character-driven way, which is great. But on a gameplay level, they fucking suck. On the other hand, Chris's companion Rebecca is much more reliable, much more competent, and you can thank her for the trope of competent companions like Carlos from Resident Evil 3, Sheva from Resident Evil 5, and of course our favorite character, Ada Wong. That's debatable for some of you. I don't care. She's awesome. But I digress. Let's talk about the gameplay. RE1 is tank control. The cameras are fixed. It has many puzzles to do. It has a limited inventory space that you have to manage in a smart way to balance out your weapons and bullets with the key items you need to progress. All the while you have to juggle in ink ribbons to manage your save files. Now, if you've played the modern Resident Evil games, the tank controls and fixed camera angles have been done away with. Okay, people don't like them. Modern audiences don't really receive them pretty well. I personally like them, but I understand why people don't. However, what remains are the puzzles and the item management aspect. Resident Evil 1 is the foundation of those concepts, and they continue to be built upon. Like, for example, the inventory space. But in Resident Evil 1, it's just a simple box where you put all your items in a row. And there's like limited spaces, like 6 or 8 spaces. I was gonna say 6, 7, but I'm not gonna do that. But it's evolved to become this like large suitcase that has a Tetris style management that's pretty fucking cool, I'm not gonna lie. We can thank Resident Evil 4 for that. We can thank Resident Evil 4 for a lot of things.
Hasta luego.
When I booted up the game, I was dreading the ink ribbon system. I really didn't want to do it. I was not in the mood for it. And imagine my surprise when I bought it on GOG that it did not exist in the game. Now, if you know why that is, hold your horses. I will touch upon this later. So there went the biggest hurdle I've had with the game, which was a saving system, and it kind of made the experience much more easy. See, what I perceived as the greatest hurdle of the game turned out to be its greatest asset. By taking away the fear of losing progress, dying, or going into a room unprepared, there was no urgency to the choices you made. Picking up every item didn't have a consequence anymore. Mapping out the labyrinth that is Baker's mansion was not scary. Dying was more of a reward than anything when you got to a place you were lost in because you mapped out the area and you didn't lose any progress. There was no sense of impending doom at every corner. The fixed camera angles were no longer scary. Nonetheless, the game's charm and atmosphere still shine through. The music, the sound effects, the voice acting, they're still charming. They make the game feel very unique. I love the sounds of the menus, the way your footsteps reverberate down the hallways as you're walking, and the low poly cutscenes that are meant to be horrifying but end up feeling cheesy. The puzzles and exploration of the game are not difficult at all. They're meant to break up the tension of you trying to survive, which I appreciate. It's always a great moment of reprieve having to push a statue into a square peg or mixing potions by decoding a bunch of codes. In one moment, you're maneuvering a hallway with a bunch of zombies trying to eat your face, and in the other, you're in a room, chilling, solving a puzzle.
I'm so right, I think.
Fuck!
The game comes to a head when you learn that Wesker, your boss, is actually double-crossing you. He is trying to bring back the Tyrant, the ultimate life form, which ends up killing Wesker in the room and then dies to a few bullets. It's very anticlimactic for the most part, but if you played your cards wrong, your companion character can die.
Die, filth.
My God!
My God! Oh no! Oh, I shouldn't be laughing.
Editing button mash here. I'd like to apologize. I think I might have been the sociopath, not Barry. But looking back at my playthrough, I had a lot of reasons to dislike him, but not to the point where I would laugh at his final moments like that. But it was the voice acting and the combination of everything was kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, after all the melodrama, you get your best weapons, the ammo you saved up, you go up to the helipad to confront the tyrant one last time. You gotta fight the final boss, you light up the flare, and... Wait, where's the final boss? Okay, so it turns out if you want the best ending possible, and you want to actually fight the final boss, you kind of have to save Barry. So to compromise and get the full experience and not save Barry, I downloaded the director's cut, and I played as Chris. See, the director's cut changes quite a bit. It changes the item placements, the camera angles, the music, and adds a few difficulty options. I thought since I beat the game already, I could just go ahead and play on the hardest difficulty, which is called arranged mode. Big mistake! Remember that unlimited save thing that I was surprised by? Well, it's not here in the director's cut. You have the ribbon system, you have to collect items that take up space to save your game, and they're limited items, so you have limited saves. I chose to play as Chris, which meant in exchange for having even less inventory space, I would do more damage. I don't understand how Chris's bullets are stronger than Jill's bullets. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Having less inventory space on the hardest difficulty was not fun. It was not fun. It was a nightmare for me, let me tell you that much, okay? I made the mistake of saving too frequently early on and being stuck with no saves for a significant portion of the game. I realized this was something that later games build upon. When you play on the hardest difficulties in those games, you do have the ink ribbon system, which makes the game harder. And this is kind of an evolution that had happened in the first game and has never changed since then, because from the original Resident Evil 1 to the director's cut, they bring in the ribbon system. But the main point is RE1's saving system transforms the genre and makes the survival aspect much more pronounced and much more stressful. And in times of great stress, there are people who revert to their childlike selves. And that's what I did. So I went back to making save states.
I'm dead. I don't have a... Guys, I promise I'm not cheating. Promise I'm not cheating. I am cheating. I'm sorry. I don't have ink ribbons.
I know. That's cheating. That's not the way you play it. Weren't you just saying? ButtonMash, weren't you just saying it takes away from the horror experience and degrades the game? I did say that. Okay, I did, but I was stuck for such a long time. You should have been there. Where were you? Where were you when I was stuck, huh? Don't judge me. I stopped with the save states as soon as I was able to pick up a few ribbons, which for some reason takes a long ass time when you're stuck in a certain area. I got to experience Chris's campaign, which had more cutscenes, more dialogue, a better companion, a better story, and an overall better experience and product. Which makes Jill's campaign feel like an afterthought, which is kind of sad, but that's another video for another time. Also, Chris is hilarious in this game.
Stop it. Wesker, you're pitiful.
Fighting the final boss makes you realize that there's this formula that starts in Resident Evil 1. You have to conserve a lot of weapons and ammo to beat him. Also, one of my favorite tropes, the missile launcher. Oh my god, the bazooka. Every time this happens in a Resident Evil game, I feel the tensions leaving my shoulders because I know I'm about to escape hell and get an ending. It's awesome. I love it. Resident Evil 1 is truly the launching pad for an amazing series. And if you work your way backwards in the series, you will begin to realize just how much later games would borrow from Resident Evil 1. I know a lot of people that recommend that you would play the Resident Evil 1 remake, which I tend to agree with if you're getting into the series, because that game, in my opinion, has the best tank controls / classic RE style gameplay that I've ever played. It's amazing. It's an amazing masterpiece, in my opinion. But keep in mind that this game cannot hold a candle to the original Resident Evil 1, and simply for one reason, because of the soundtrack. If you like the video, like and subscribe. If my channel confuses you with the amount of unfocused uploads, also like and subscribe, because you never know when I'm going to upload a video like this again. Stay guessing. Thank you for watching.